Shalom and welcome. We are going to be looking at a Parsha BaShalach in, in talking about this portion, which is the portion for this week. And one of the things we're going to do is today we're going to do this in the Sechut or the merit, so that Rivka Basara Basia would have a full and complete recovery. And many of you who have sent emails to understand that the importance of reading Tehillim and doing mitzvot in order to bring sechut to the person who is sick. And this is a person who has given her life entirely to Chassidut and to teaching Torah, being also the wife of the head shliach in South Florida. And so we are praying that she would have a full and complete recovery, and would ask you, those of you who are listening and watching this, would definitely read Psalms on her behalf, and that she would have a complete and full recovery. So for her neshama as well as her guf, her body, that she may have a complete and full recovery is our prayer as we look at this parsha of the week, which is the Parsha BaShalach. And one of the things that we read here in this parsha is that the children of Israel were sent to uh, to go into the land, but in a very different way. Normally, it was easier to go into the land through the land of the Philistines. And we read that it happened when the Pharaoh sent out the people that God did not lead them by the way of the land of Philistine because it was near. God said, perhaps the people will reconsider when they see a war and they will return to Egypt. So here we see that God takes concern over the status or mindset, the psychological framework, as it were, of the children of Israel and how they may react to such dangers or peril. And thus, the route to Eretz Israel, which would have been the quickest, easiest form directly through the route of Egypt through the Palestinian land, is then diverted and is taken a longer way. And here we learn a concept that sometimes the longer way is the better way instead of the shortest way. But there's something very interesting that we look at this passage, because this question of fearing comes again. You know, the mindset of the children of Israel being afraid and fearing is repeated over in Bashalach. The constant aspect of being afraid or fearing and wanting to return back to Mitzrayim, where the physical sustenance was very at hand and very easily sustainable. And I look at this, especially with what we're going through here in the United States, and many unemployed and many really concerned about the financial situations. We have something to which we can have comfort in knowing that we can rest and rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu to make and provide for our needs, even when it's very, very difficult to do so. And thus, we have this aspect that God watches over us, that God is looking for our best interest. And sometimes we do not realize that is, in fact, the case. That we think that we, by our own strength and our own abilities, will be able to make it through the day. When in fact is that when we have emet bitachon, true trust in Hashem, we can rely in the most difficult of times and see the very hand of the Almighty work through us and in us and by us and through other people to be able to sustain us when sustenance would, in a normal frame of reference, would not be possible. And here we find that even in the case of the returning of the body of Joseph to Eretz Israel and to the Holy Land, is something that he was able to foresee that would take place. And Moshe takes the bones of Joseph with him, for he had firmly adjured. He made an oath to the children of Israel that God surely would remember you, the children of Israel, and you shall bring up my bones from here. And here we find the promise that of redemption, that God would in fact follow through with his promise. Now further on, we have the encounter with the children of Israel as they're traversing the land, going into the Red Sea. They are confronted, of course, with this obstacle the Red Sea. And the people began um, to be concerned again over the fear of what was going to happen, that they were going to be slaughtered right there at the edge of the Red Sea, at the hands of the Egyptians. And we read that their response to Moses was, "Were there no graves in Egypt that you took us to die in the wilderness? What is it that you have done to us to take us out of Egypt?" In other words, what are you doing to us here? We had safety, we had bread, we had sustenance, we had divine protection, we had everything there in Egypt. Why did you take us out of Egypt? To bring us to what? To our graves? And here again, we're struggling with the mindset, the psychological mindset of the children of Israel, worrying about the physical necessities, when what God was trying to teach the children of Israel, and still is trying to teach us today, is the fact that we should have complete trust in God, that no matter what the situation or whatever is the circumstances, that God is with us even in the most difficult of times, and that we can have complete trust in Him, that we will see His hand in action when we need it the most. Now, here is what Moses begins to say to the people of Israel at this moment of need. Vayomer Moshe el ha'am al tera'u yitzatzevu vayuru uru et Yeshua Hashem asher yaseh lachem hayom kol asher brietem et Mizrayim. And so Moses begins to say, don't fear. Stand firm and see the salvation, the Yeshua, the salvation that Hashem is going to bring to you. Now that doesn't mean, for those of you that are involved in this shtus of Christianity or Messianism, doesn't mean that this is referring to a person. So let's get that squared away and removed in the forefront here. Doesn't refer to that at all. It refers to God's way of delivering the help that's needed at the moment that is needed. It is God's interventions to save us out of the predicament. In this case, it is a psychological predicament. They were afraid that they were going to be wiped out as the Egyptian army is coming from behind. They were concerned about perhaps their own merit to be able to really see a miracle take place for them. And Moses tells the people, don't fear. Stand fast. In other words, just be still. Just stop it. Stop the complaining. Stop the agitation. Stop the commotion of trying to do things your way. Your way never worked. Relax. Enjoy the opportunity of the time and the moment that Hashem is giving you, so you can relax and see the goodness of Hashem in the midst of the most difficult and trying times. Now, you say that to a person that is in a very wealthy situation, you say, well, of course, he has all the money, he has that all. But a person that's struggling just to make their ends meet, the person that's struggling, the person that's unemployed, the person that does not know what's going to happen from here to tomorrow, is that person that has that same type of mindset, and they're worrying what is going to happen. And here's where Hashem says to us today, because the Torah is always alive in today's mode, in the verb of today's mode. He tells us, take it easy. Take it easy. You connect with me. Don't fear. Watch what I'm going to do. In this watching, you're going to observe how Hashem provides for you, how Hashem has been taking care of you all of this time, and all of your toils, and all of your efforts, and all of your trying to do God a favor comes to naught. God says, you know what? Everything I do, everything I provide you, because I am good, and I'm giving you of my goodness to you. So stay back and watch. And he tells us something very important here. And this is what we learn here, that this idea of stand fast and see is a consensus that God was about to show them the great miracle in order to strengthen their faith for all time. Ibn Nazar says something different. He says that this rational approach, he contends that God could not order the Jews to stand and fight despite their great numbers because they had been conditioned by more than a century of servitude to fear and to obey their Egyptian masters and were incapable, notice this word, incapable of battle. This is why only Moses' prayer enabled them to overcome the greatly outnumbered Amalekites, who ambushed them in the wilderness in the Parsha of Shemot, chapter 17, verse 8 through 13. And this is why it's also necessary for the generation to die in the wilderness over the next 40 years. Then their children, who had been raised in a different spirit, would be ready to wage war with the Canaanite nation. And this is so true. The biggest disastrous aspects or mindsets or attitudes that affect the Jewish people is this negative attitude, this being conditioned by a slave mindset, a mindset that we have to depend upon other people. Matter of fact, part of our prayer in the morning is just that Hashem, don't allow us to be dependent upon the gifts of other people, but that you used to ply us with your hands. This is why we raise our hands and we kiss our hands in that moment. What is going on here with this nation? What is going on in the world around us? People are losing their jobs. People are in a state of stress. They're concerned. And yet never before you have plenty of time at your hand. You have time to sit back, watch television, watch the computer, open the newspaper. Time that perhaps you didn't have because you were so busy working your tail off, trying to make the buck, trying to squeeze every single second to make that extra physical dollar, and you're back in the same situation. You've really moved nowhere. You're in the same mindset. The only difference is at that time you were enslaved to that job. You were enslaved to that idea that you had to obtain more. And it got you in the same position. You have nothing. Bankrupt. Empty. Hello? Since 9/11, God has been trying to get our attention. He's been trying to sound the alarm to us. Say, hello, wake up, people. There's something more important here than the physical earning of money and the accumulation of wealth. Yes, that's important. That's only a vehicle, a tool. Believe it or not, I'm not denying that aspect of importance. It's important. It's a tool in order to reach goals. But it's not the all in all. And when we lose focus on the all in all, which is supposed to be God, we become bankrupt as a nation. We become bankrupt as a people. We become bankrupt as individuals. We become bankrupt as families. And families begin to break down because the pressures of the home begins to melt away and destroy the very basis and establishments, foundations of the home. We learn in this Parsha of Bashalach. We go forward. But we go forward not in our own strength, but we go forward because Hashem says, go forward. Have emunah, have bitachon in me. And Moses tells the people, do not fear, stand fast, and see the salvation of Hashem. That He will perform for you today, not tomorrow, today, at the moment of the confrontation of the problem of your situation. Do not fear, for as you have seen Egypt today, you shall not see them ever again. Hashem shall do battle for you, and you shall remain, what? Silent. Be quiet. Stop the complaining. Stop the gossiping and the sighing. Have faith in God. For heaven's sakes. When we complain, bicker and we gossip and we speak a lashon hara and we destroy other people's business by what we say. It's time for us to do shuvah. This is why it's a time, an appropriate time, even now, at this time of calamity, at this time where there are people that are sick and in need, to say, I'm sorry. Let's get right with God. Let's get right with one another. Why hold up going forward at this crucial moment in history? But it does not end there. Hashem said to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Now it's interesting because the commentaries say with this expression, Ma titzak elai, why do you cry out to me? Moses too was praying, and God told him, now when Israel's in distress, there is no time for lengthy prayer, Moses. How many times when we're in distress, we're, oh please, oh please. Now when Israel's in distress, there's no time for lengthy prayers. Alternatively, the verse is rendered, Ma tatzak, why do you cry out? As if the plight of Israel is your responsibility. Elai, to me, it is to me to save the nations. Therefore, you should instruct them to move ahead, and I will attend to their safety. I will attend to their welfare, says Rashi. Now, it's interesting because Saforno, which was a Italian Chachamim, as a sage, he offers a novel approach on this. He says that the leaders castigated him for taking him out to Egypt, and Moses cried out because he feared that they were lacking in faith and would not obey him when he ordered them to advance into the sea. To this God replied, says Saforno, that he was misjudging the people. All he had to do was to give the command. Go! Bashalach, go! Or, Hachaim deals with a fundamental problem of this passage. Isn't prayer the proper response when people are faced with danger? This is what our sages tell us. That when the calamity hits, when it is time, it's time to have an introspection of our lives, to look inwardly and to ask God, what's going on here? Let's do tikkun, let's do reparation, to do a cheshbon, to do an accounting of what's happening in our lives. Obviously, Moses Rabbeinu was doing the same thing. So why are Israel and Moses commanded not to pray at this time? He explained that God exercised his attribute of mercy only when the victims have at least a minimum degree of merit. At the sea, however, the attribute of justice argued that the Jews, no less than the Egyptians, had worshipped idols, and that it was unjust for one nation to be saved while the other is destroyed. Now, this is alluded to in verse 19 when the angel is called the angel, the Malach of Elohim, and the name denoting judgment, because the Jewish people were being judged right there. Consequently, prayer alone could not be efficacious. It could not be sufficient. And there had to be a tangible merit. We're talking about mitzvot aseh, or maaseh. In other words, the commandment that it has to do with doing something. You have to do something. Therefore, God commanded that prayers be stopped and the people demonstrate their readiness to put their lives in danger in obedience to God by plunging them into the water. Of course, this has an additional concept of actually a form of a mikvah, of a purifying effect. That displays that faith would earn them the miracle, the ness of the splitting of the sea. Verse 17 continues and tells us, and I behold, and I shall strengthen the heart of the Egyptian, or of Egypt, and they will come after them. Not only of the leader, we're talking about the whole entire nation, Egypt. And I will be glorified through the Pharaoh and through his entire army. Now, some have compared the Pharaoh to our current leader in office, and we won't say that out loud, but in any case, there is no question that there is something correlating here in the aspect of divine providence for us to learn and to grow from. And that is that without understanding that God is the one in control, and at this moment in history, people have hardened their hearts towards God, or at least many people have. That's what happened during the time of Egypt and our exodus from Egypt. We have to understand that this is also divine providence, hashgacha pratit, which means that everything that happens and is happening is coming from above. But we still can do something. We can still move forward. And this is why Jewish concepts of this idea of freedom of choice and the choice that we take is so important, because it can determine the merit or the lack thereof of changing our current situation. I was explaining the other day in a class that I was giving here in Aventura to a group of people who were wanting to know why this business situation is going, you would say, down the toilet. And quite frankly, I was telling them because we've lost this notion of the concept of good or goods. See, people think that goods is, we're in business and we're going to make money and we're going to steal and take and so forth. But that's not that really the concept of goods and exchange of goods. As you know, the word good or goods, it has to do with tov tovim. And it's really connected to doing really what God wants us to do. Whenever a person is involved in trade or business, and they're providing a product or service in exchange for goods or services, in exchange for what we call money, they are in fact involved and connected to and connected with doing a mitzvah, doing God's business. So there's no such thing that just doing business is completely secular. This is untrue and it's unfounded in Judaism. Just the opposite. Everything you do in your business world is reflected. The way you do your business is the way you also conduct your personal lives. It's an extension. It's part of you. Because the same ethical values you bring to your business is the same ethical values you bring in other aspects of your life. So if there's moral decay, moral corruption in your life, there's also most likely moral corruption in your business. Not always the case, but it usually spills over in different aspects of your life. So what God is telling us that we need to get our lives straightened up. We are lacking merits to have a miracle performed. Well, the miracle that God commands Moses to do is a miracle of doing something, not just hearing something, not just feeling all the goosebumps, but actually doing something. That means we have to do. That means in the morning, put the tefillin on. That means in the afternoon, pray to Hashem. But that means more than just that, because what we're reading about, sometimes prayer is just not enough. Prayer is just not enough. And God tells us we have to move forward. We have to trust and watch, but in that sense of comfort in knowing that God is in control. He is the master of the world, not you. That's why we wear this little thing called a yarmulke or a kippah, to remind us that who is really the real boss over us. It's not us. We have a big boss who is the creator of heaven and earth. He is the one that decides who lives, who dies, who will be healed, who will be sick or sickened. And thus, he is the one that controls everything that is happening in this world. Even though we may think, well, the politicians, the one in the White House, the one over there in Israel, the prime minister, this, that, blah, 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 blah. The bottom line is that's all not true. That's shepherd. That's a complete facade. They can only do what is actually permitted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is the great power of understanding and trust in God that's completely immovable. Because no matter what station that you are in life, being in a station of complete poverty and lacking the physical necessities needed, to the point that you're completely full, like Shlomo HaMelech, of all the wealth and everything your physical desires, wants, and is satisfied, God must be placed in the center of your life, the center of your heart, the center of your existence. I'm not talking about a religion. I'm talking about a living relationship with the living Creator who interacts with His creation on a daily and microsecond and nanosecond moment. We're talking about get connected with God. Every person that's impoverished and is needing for tzedakah and handout is an opportunity for those who have to be able to give. Again, the word mitzvah, I'm going to say, to do something, to extend tzedakah. Why are there so many poor people now? All of a sudden, handouts, needing. God is trying to send a message to America, and America is not listening. God is trying to send a message to the children of Israel, and I do pray they're listening. And that is, it's time to do action, not just lip service. Not just say, yeah, I promised this, and never deliver on their promise. There's a lot of empty promises. I remember some time ago, a very wealthy person promised to give a check of $1 million to our organization. Yeah. And we were already all excited because that was a word of promise. It was actually a nether. And I failed. I failed because I was really relying on this guy to come over and write out a check to our organization to be able then to really fund what we wanted to do, which was to reach out to many people, through other information, radio, television, the whole 9 yards, and really give people what they need, develop the food bank and all this other stuff. Guy didn't go through, didn't come through. I was crushed. I said, how can they? How can they not be people of their word? How can they do this? But then I had to do some inspection, examine myself. And in reality, I have to realize one main thing. People are people, and people will fail. People are non-committal and break through their promise. That's part of the human nature, and not only that, not to make excuse for that, because they should honor it, but nonetheless, it's part of the human fragility. We don't come through with our promises. Even though we may have a good intent, and we make these vows, the bottom line is that it is God who makes sure that the person can come through with those promises. The intention is there, perhaps, the goodwill, but the bottom line is, God said, hey, it's not for you today. Maybe one day. But the bottom line, my trust is no longer waiting for that guy to come over with a check to be able to fill out and be able to do what I have to do to get the message across. In reality, we have seen many miracles through our organization's lifetime. From being on television, reaching out South Florida and throughout the world with only maybe $2,000. How can that be? Because God provides the means and the wherewith and opens the doors of opportunities to be able to do this. Don't fear. Stand back. Watch. Enjoy what God's going to do with your life. This opportunity, you have some extra time at your hand. It's perhaps time to look inward, yes, but also to look outward. What you can do for other people. What you can do to help other people at this moment of crisis and need. Just because you're unemployed doesn't mean you can't help. You can't do something. You still have a phone. You still have an ability to be able to speak. You still have the ability to walk your feet over to the hospital and visit the sick. You still have the ability to perhaps say a good word to a fellow human being and say, God bless you. Instead, with the sad, ugly face of depression and destroying the whole atmosphere, instead you could change and transform into something positive and say, you know what? Even though I'm going through this valley, I know that God is with me. He will sustain me. He will strengthen me. And if God forbid He decides not to, He brings me to naught, I have nothing to say. I am His. He is mine. The bottom line, it's still all good. And this is the assurance and the response that God tells Moses, I will do battle for you. Remain silent. I will go out to war for you. I will do this, says Hashem. Remain quiet. Our job? Shh. Silence. Be still. Don't get yourself all hyped up. That's very hard when a person is very stressed out, because their initial reaction is they want to do something. They want to get motivated in doing something. Hashem says, no. He says, lift up your staff, Moses, stretch out your arm over the seas, split the sea, and the children of Israel shall come into the midst of the sea on dry land. Not wet land, not murky lands, not land that has still water, floating around and wetting and destroying everything you put your whole life effort into. No. Dry land. And behold, it says, I shall strengthen the heart of Egypt, and they shall come after them, and I will be glorified through the Pharaoh and through his entire army, through his chariots and through his horsemen, and Egypt will know that I am Hashem. Here is the goal. Here is the reason. Here is the rason of what's happening in the world. You will know that I am Hashem. God is trying to get the attention of us all to let us know that He is God, not you, not the government, not the religious leaders. He is. And when we put that into complete, perfect perspective, we will understand that we can fully trust in His goodness and His strength to bring us through this difficult time. The angel of God, who had been going in front of the children of Israel, moved from behind the very moment they moved forward. It says in verse 19, the angel of God, who had been going in front of the children of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from in the front of them and went in the behind of them. What happened is that they, as it were, they opened up the back so that the Egyptian army could go rushing toward the front, and the angel of Hashem went in front of them, in back of them as they were going forward to protect their rear end, as it were. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and Hashem moved the sea with a strong east wind all the night, and He turned the sea to the damp land, and the water spilled, and the children of Israel came within the sea on dry land, and the water was a wall for them on their right and on their left. Oh, this is so beautiful. Imagine a wall of mayim all around you. It was like a big mikveh, but the water was actually not touching them. It was more insulating and protecting them. And of course, Egypt pursued and came after them. All the horses of Pharaoh and his chariots. Now, so it says here, all the horses of Pharaoh and his chariots and his horsemen into the middle of the sea, or midst of the sea. And it happened at the morning watch that Hashem looked down at the camp of Egypt with a pillar of fire, and He confounded the camp of Egypt, and He removed the wheels of their chariots and caused them to drive with difficulty. And what happened? As they went into the midst of the sea, all of these walls of water that stood up to protect and to bring the children of Israel into the dry land, into the other side, came collapsing over the whole entire armies of Egypt, the horsemen. And as our sages tell us, the bodies and horses and everything began to wash on the shore of their death, and from that they no longer saw them. And from there we read in chapter 15 of this Parsha BaShalach, that Moses and the children of Israel chose to sing this song to Hashem, and they said the following. And I want you to listen to this song. This song is so important. It is the song of the sea, or by the sea. I shall sing to Hashem, for He is exalted above the arrogant. What is this? One of the things that cause more problems to our lives is being arrogant. And what Hashem does is He humiliates and brings to a low level the arrogant. Those who cannot go to their fellow human being and recognize their faults and say, you know what? I did something wrong against you. That's an arrogant person, a person that has no bittul whatsoever. It's arrogance. Why? It's full of yesh, of themselves. This is what our passage is. It tells us in the Tanakh that God will not despise a contrite and broken heart, but he will completely refuse and reject and humble a person who's arrogant of heart. This has been the lesson that we saw in Parsha BaShalach, that God sent Moses to confront the Pharaoh because he became arrogant. He became to make fun of God like he was jesting about God. You don't make jest about God. You don't play with the God of the universe. You just don't do that. You show respect. You show reverence. You show holiness. You don't play around with God, especially with the God of Israel. You just don't do that. You're playing with fire when you start doing that. And unfortunately, this country, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to take this chance, this risk, as it were, but this country has turned its back on the Jewish people on many levels, as well as the nation of Israel. Now, of course, whether you recognize Israel or not as a nation, I'm not going to get into all of that. The bottom line, it is a nation made up of Jews, and as such, they put their back against them. Till this day, even Pollard is still in prison. And we have seen those of you who have been listening to my teaching or the teachings that we've been giving in Spanish and English will see clearly the hand of Hashem basically striking the United States one after another with hurricanes, with earthquakes, with financial disasters, and still it doesn't get the message. Even the Christian community, I'm asking myself, where are they? They used to call people back to God, supposedly. Where are they to call people back to return to the one God? I really think it's a time for a big convention of monotheists and really to open our hearts to God and say, God, forgive us as a nation here. But this sound is going on deaf ears. No one's listening, or appears that to be the case. I shall sing to Hashem, for he is exalted above the arrogant, having hurled horses with its riders into the sea. The might and vengeance of God was salvation for me. Notice this. The might and the vengeance of God was salvation for me. This is my God, and I will build him a sanctuary, the God of my father, and I will exalt him. Hashem is master of war. His name is Hashem. Of course, we do not pronounce the name of Hashem because of the holiness, so not to take the name of Hashem in vain. The Pharaoh's chariots and armies he threw into the sea. And the pick of his officers were mired in the sea of reeds. Deep waters covered them. They descended into the depth like stone. What a picture. Your right hand, Hashem, is glorified with strength. In your right hand, Hashem smashes the enemy. How many enemies do we have, or do you have? In your abundant grandeur, you shatter your opponents. You send forth your wrath. It consumes them like straw. At a blast of your nostrils, the waters were heaped up. Straight as the wall stood the running waters. The deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemies declared, I will pursue, I will overtake you, I will divide and plunder, I will satisfy my lust with them, I will unsheath my sword, my hand will impoverish them, I will blew with your wind, the sea enshrouded them, or you blew with your wind, the sea enshrouded them, the might sank like lead into the water. Who is like you, Mikamocha, among the heavenly powers, Hashem? Who is like you? Mikamocha, or Mikamocha. Who is like you, mighty in holiness, too awesome for praise, doers of wonders? You stretched out your right hand. The earth swallowed them. Wow, incredible. That sounds like a picture over there in Guatemala. The earth swallowed them. With your kindness, you guided the people, and you redeemed. You led them with your might, your holy abode. People heard and they were agitated. Terror gripped the dwellers in Philistia, and the chieftains of Edom were confounded. Trembling gripped the powers of Moab, and all the dwellers of Canaan dissolved. May the fear and terror befall them at the greatness of your arm, and may there still be as stone until your people passes through. Hashem, until this people you have acquired passes through. This is the message of Passover. We need to have faith in God and God alone, not in the human ability to be able to bring us out of it, but in the ability of God to bring us out of our own turmoils. And my friend, now is an opportunity. You can do something. Now, those of you who have the resources can be able to provide those who don't have the ability to make it through, to show a hand of mercy and kindness. You can do so. Giving tzedakah, giving charity, giving. Yes, giving. Yes, giving. Because giving basically saves from an evil decree. This is what our sages says. This is what we say even on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Now is an opportunity to give. And I'm going to give you that opportunity. You can give anywhere you want. I can't tell you where to give. But I can suggest you to give to what we're doing here at Los Caminos Israel, through Radio Torah, through our different outreach programs. Give. Give. You can do so right online. Go to our website, www.loscaminosisrael.com, and right there you'll see the link to the PayPal for the donation. Of course, all donations are tax deductible if they're done here in the United States or perhaps Canada. You must check with your CPA or tax advisor. But it is time to give. You want to give? Be more than happy to send you an invoice and bill. Just send it to Los Caminos Israel at yahoo.com. Los Caminos Israel at yahoo.com. We did this in memory and in the merit that Rivka Bas Sarah Basia have a full and complete recovery. And may you who are listening also say Tehillim, read prayers on her behalf. Shalom, shalom.